Full disclosure, this video is not an objective critic. I'm just some random French dude that decided for some reason to share his opinion.
This is taking too long!
And if you just don't like my takes,
I don't give a shit!
Hi!
Hello there.
Merry New Year, Happy Christmas, no one actually cares about those banalities, so we can already move on from it.
And also maybe because it's already February.
Wait, it is? The fuck have I been doing for the past month?
Absolutely nothing!
Okay, whatever, let's begin this video. Opening! So, in 1938, a cartoonist named Charles Addams published in The New Yorker a series of single-panel cartoons depicting the Addams Family, a strange, macabre, satirical version of the ideal American family. Throughout the years, this strange family was adapted in comic books, musicals, TV shows, movies, animated movies and shows, and video games. Roughly 19 adaptations came to light since 1938. And with all of that, I never watched a single adaptation. I didn't have any while growing up and never felt really interested in filling this hole in my culture once I had the possibility to do so. Which is why when a TV show about Wednesday Addams was announced late 2020, this news could not possibly have been less impactful for me. And while a lot of people were interested because Tim Burton was directing and producing, I simply remembered that the guy had not made a single relevant movie for the past 15 years and basically forgot about the project entirely. Then a few weeks ago I stumbled upon an article saying the last Addams Family iteration was racist because Tim Burton refused to token cast and the character of the bully was played by a black actress. So of course I became interested in the show and went to watch the first episode, because when woke tears are shed it usually means the product is at least entertaining. Little did I know I was about to devour the 8th episode and be frustrated to be done this quick.
That's what she said.
Perhaps it was because I had just came out of those 2 nightmares that were Rings of Power and She-Hulk, but watching a strong female character not being completely broken while having a nicely written story warmed my heart to a point that very few movies or TV shows ever achieved. So today let's talk about my greatest discovery of 2022. Today let's talk about Wednesday. The story begins in a high school where we meet a goth teenager called Wednesday Addams. After she finds her brother tied up and locked in her locker, she decides to get her revenge by releasing a bunch of piranhas in the pool of the school while the bullies are swimming, which gets her transferred to her parents' old school for outcasts, Nevermore. There in the middle of werewolves, vampires, sirens and other magicians, her mother hopes that Wednesday's recently awakened visions and her overall shining personality will be considered normal. But the teenager has other plans, since she intends on getting fired from this school as quickly as possible to spite her parents that she considers too controlling. But quickly a series of mysterious murders striking the small town of Jericho catches Wednesday's interest, especially since body parts seems to be missing every time, pushing her to interact and form bonds with other students to unveil this morbid mystery. When Rowan, a fellow student, tries to kill Wednesday to prevent a certain prophecy from happening, she is saved by a strange-looking monster tearing the young man apart. Those mysterious murders and the 2 attempts on her life are enough for Wednesday to be officially intrigued and to decide to stay Nevermore to find out the truth. Relationships are built. Friendship first, with Enid, a colorful werewolf, and Eugene, a surprisingly likable student fascinated by bees. Then a rivalry with Bianca, a siren who excels at pretty much everything, and perhaps even a romantic entanglement with Tyler, a normie and son of the local sheriff, and Xavier, a magician giving life to his drawing. That reminds me of something. Between kidnappings, psychiatric evaluations, psychic visions, sport event, parties, high school drama and of course investigations, Wednesday has a lot to do, but accompanied by Thing, her faithful pet hand, she will slowly unveil the mystery and understand that those murders are more than simply murders. In a vision, Wednesday relieves the memory of her ancestor Goody Addams being hunted by Joseph Crackstone, the founding father of the town of Jericho, who tried to burn her alive with others for their magical abilities. The spirit of her ancestor then directly speaks to her and tells her that she is the key. After a school dance turned bloody, Eugene gets hurt by the monster, which makes Wednesday feeling something she never did before. Guilt, since she is the reason why he got hurt. After Wednesday saved her father from going to prison for the old murder of a normie called Garrett Gates back when he was a student at Nevermore, the mayor of Jericho gets killed because he started to figure out who was behind the killings. Wednesday goes with Enid and Tyler where he was, in the Gates family house, where they find the missing body parts from the murders and fresh flowers looking exactly like the ones that Dr. Kimbot, Wednesday's psychiatrist, seems to enjoy. Everything starts pointing toward Laurel Gates, the little sister of Garrett Gates who disappeared years ago. Suddenly Fester arrives in town. With the description of the monster, he explains to Wednesday that she's facing a Hyde, as in Jekyll and Hyde. The thing with Hydes is that they don't really act on their own. They follow the orders of a master, which means Wednesday is looking for 2 killers, not 1. The pieces of the puzzle are assembling and Wednesday accuses Dr. Kimbot of being Laurel. But only a few minutes later the psychiatrist gets attacked and killed by the Hyde. After a few dates with Tyler, Wednesday and him kiss and she gets a vision of him turning into the Hyde and killing Dr. Kimbot. After what appeared to be foreplay, she gets arrested but without being locked up at the condition that she gets fired from Nevermore. Then Tyler admits to her that she was right because he knows that no one will believe her. Not even Xavier, framed by Tyler and currently locked up. Before leaving, she goes to check on Eugene, who just woke up at the hospital. He tells her that before getting attacked, he saw the Hyde's master wearing red boots. Wednesday realizes that those boots are Professor Thornhill's, which means she is Laurel Gates. So of course Wednesday confronts her, but she kills the Principal Weems before kidnapping her. Turns out her objective was to resurrect Joseph Crackstone to get him to kill all the outcasts, which is why she needed the body parts, and Wednesday, since her blood was the final ingredient for the ritual.
You were the key.
Everything accelerates. Crackstone is back with power, he stabs Wednesday but her ancestor heals her, he burns shit down, and it finally wolfs out and defeats the Hyde. The prophecy is accomplished, Wednesday fights Crackstone, Bianca helps, he dies, that bitch is still around, B powers from Eugene, head stomp, victory, Enid finally gets a hug from Wednesday after 4 failed attempts. Rest of the semester cancelled, so return home until next year. Wednesday gets a stalker, Tyler is still alive. To be continued. So, that show is fucking great! Since I don't know much about the Addams Family, I don't know if this show is actually sacrilegious for the fans of the source material, but as a standalone, it's fucking amazing!
I like that.
Of course, the show is not perfect, so I'm going to address a few problems, but overall it really was pleasing to watch. In fact, so pleasing that I watched the entire season 3 times in a week. So let's begin by talking about the positives. The obvious biggest good point about this show is her. Wednesday is absolutely perfect. First of all, the actress, Jenna Ortega, is doing an absolute fantastic job. Everything from her line delivery to her expression, or lack of expression most of the time. Her subtle changes of posture, she's captivating from start to finish. I mean, she managed to sell this dance scene without cringing me out, and almost every single dance scene of history cringed me out. Probably because I hate dancing, I don't know why, it just makes my skin crawl. Her dialogues are simply brilliant, the morbid humor of the show is really working, probably more because of the delivery than the writing itself.
That boy's family was going to file attempted murder charges. How would that have looked on your record?
Terrible. Everyone would know I failed to get the job done.
I've assigned you to your mother's old dorm, Ophelia Hall.
Oh,
Refresh my memory. Ophelia's the one who kills herself after being driven mad by her family. Correct?
What, you're not gonna volunteer? Aren't you pumped about disco balls and spiked punch? There's even a DJ. MC Bloodsuckers.
I'd rather stick needles in my eyes. I'll probably do that anyway.
She's basically a punchline Gatling, and her writing in general is very interesting. She begins the show as the absolute loner, not a care in the world for anything that isn't at least indirectly linked to death and destruction. But throughout the story, without doing a complete 180, she opens up a little, slowly changing and even showing a softer side from time to time, like with Enid when she talks about the only time she cried, or with Bianca during the school dance when she admits that she's not completely fine with the way she always acts and is perceived by others, or pretty much all her interaction with the second best character of the show, Thing. Thing is Wednesday's pet hand.
He's sensitive.
Okay, not pet, partner. He was initially sent by Gomez and Morticia, Wednesday's parents, to spy on her, but got caught almost immediately and ended up helping her throughout the story. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but this character is really funny. His relationship with Wednesday is adorable. Seeing that hand run around on its own made me at least smile every time, and there is even a super heartwarming moment with him. Yes, heartwarming moment focused on a living hand. Like for example when Thing tricks Wednesday into going on a date with Tyler and even stole a dress for her. Which made me wonder how exactly that happened. Like, did the hand simply crawl through the entire town while holding the dress with 2 fingers? Did the entire town simply watch the hand carry a dress for miles? I mean, apparently local folks know that the Outcasts have weird powers, but this is a little much. Anyway, Thing even has the scene with the biggest amount of sadness / drama and tension of the season. In that scene, Thing has been stabbed and Wednesday brings him to Fester for him to use his powers to shock him back to life. So to sum it up, this scene is about a creepy goth girl bringing a severed hand to a bald dead looking guy for him to use his fingers as defibrillators to save it from dying. On any account, this scene should be ridiculous, and yet it turns out to be heartbreaking. Because Thing is super likable and because Wednesday is about to cry. And Wednesday doesn't do crying. Ever.
Why are you crying?
Because I'm upset.
Haven't you ever cried? Are you above that too?
His different interactions with Wednesday are adorable, between the fact that he communicates in signs that apparently pretty much everyone understands, the fact that half of the time Wednesday is basically threatening him or telling him he is incompetent while he is doing his best as just a hand.
How do you lose him in a bathroom with no windows? A lefty wouldn't have failed me. Don't sulk.
And surprisingly it never makes her look cruel or mean, or the fact that it's a hand with feelings yet it never feels stupid or out of place. All of that makes the character really shine. But to be fair, he's not the only one, most characters are actually very well written. The principal Weems, played by Gwendolyn Christie, is pretty interesting. For most of the season you're wondering if she's a good guy or a bad guy, and even at the end you're still not sure, but you understand her motivation. And even if she apparently hated Wednesday's mom because she was into Gomez back in the days, she never actually pushed that on Wednesday unfairly. Bianca really feels super interesting and her story will probably be explored more in season 2. Oh, and while I'm on Bianca, let's address it. The initial controversy that brought me to the show. Bianca is introduced as the mean girl, the bully, the bitch that the main character is gonna have to defeat or humiliate basically. So of course, since she's played by a black actress, it's gotta be because the guy writing is racist, right?
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
This is so moronic, I don't even know where to start. Okay, yeah, maybe let's start with no, you fucking retards! Casting black actors in bad guy roles is not racist! It's specifically the opposite. Not casting black actors in bad guy roles would be racist, because you would be taking opportunities away from people based on their skin color. You know, the definition of racism! Also, according to Kumail Nanjiani, is that how you say his name? We now know that Hollywood is actually doing exactly that, refusing to cast actors other than white in bad guy roles, which is racist against literally everyone. White people and non-white people.
But you can't be racist against white people.
No, this is where you zip it, all right? The adult is talking.
But can you explain the fact that the only black characters in the show are villains? Yes! Yes, I can. Very easily. Who are the 3 main black characters of the show? I'm saying main because there are others, but they are not actually named because they're not really characters, they're just background. There is the mayor, his son, and Bianca. All 3 are more or less bad guys. Let's start with the mayor's son. He doesn't like outcasts, so he acts like an ass, but that's the same thing for what? half of Jericho, which is mostly composed of white people, and also halfway through the season he realized that he is acting like an ass and actually changes.
Guys, I was thinking that maybe this isn't such a good idea.
Dude, you're the whole reason we're even doing this. To get revenge on those freaks for nuking Crackstone's fountain.
Yeah, don't tell me you've got soft like Tyler.
Why'd you trash the dance?
I don't know. Guess I was angry that my dad was humiliated on outreach day when I paid back. But then after we did it, kind of felt like crap. I realized I needed to wipe the board, you know? Start over.
So not really a bad guy. The mayor is a bad guy because he hid the truth about the Gates family, which led to Gomez going in prison. Yes.
How's your mother?
Devastated. She hates you in Orange.
But he explains it, and his explanation makes sense. Telling the truth would have only amplified the hatred between the outcast and the people of Jericho. So hiding it was actually helping reducing the conflict between people. So even if it went poorly, he was never really a bad guy. And finally, Bianca. Bianca is a siren. Wait a second. Siren, black skin, good looking, really short hair, wears blue makeup. Oh my god! Why do I remember this? So, she's a siren. Quickly we learn that in a way she considers her power to be a curse because they influence everybody's feelings for her. So she can never truly know if people like her or if they're forced by her powers.
You don't know what it's like.
Being beautiful and popular.
Never knowing people's true feelings. If someone likes me for me.
Even more, later in the show we learn that she ran away from her family because they are part of some siren cult which uses their powers to force people to join in, which is particularly fucked up. So even if she stayed a bitch the entire season, Bianca would actually have very good reasons to be one. But she doesn't even do that. Before half the season, her and Wednesday have a talk, and then she straight out becomes an ally who even helped her defeat Crackstone at the end of the season. Crackstone, who is the final bad guy, and who is white. Just like the Hyde and its masters are both white. So clearly the people that screamed racism about the show didn't even watch the show, but just wanted to pretend there was a problem when there was none.
Progressives not actually being progressive? Crazy.
Oh, and also I can't believe I have to say this, but calling a white man racist because some not so nice characters are black while he is making a show entirely focused on a chick from Mexican descent is moronic beyond any measure.
I'm a moron. Fucking moron.
Anyway, let's go back to the characters. Xavier didn't really feel that interesting. His powers are cool and he was a little developed, but clearly not enough to really shine, especially since the focus of the show was completely directed at Tyler as a love interest. And about Tyler, I'm conflicted. Because I like the character, and I would like to know more about his family's past, and his relationship with Wednesday was really cute. But at the same time, I really feel like if there is one character that does not need a love interest, it would probably be Wednesday Addams. So on one side I liked that romance, but on the other side it felt very unnecessary, which results in me being conflicted about the character. Eugene was surprisingly a very likable character, always positive even though he's kind of ridiculous most of the time, fully passionate about his bees and becoming sort of a little brother to Wednesday. Dr. Kimbot, the shrink, is not really developed as a character, she mostly has a function, but I really liked her scene with Wednesday in terms of direction. I'm gonna completely spoil the first therapy session scene, but it's necessary to show you how well made it is. The scene is composed of simple shot, reverse shot, which is a common filming technique in which you film one character, then the other looking back at the first, then back to the first one, and so on. If you've seen literally any movie or TV show ever, you've seen that technique in action. But simple technique does not mean simplistic result, and in that scene you could almost skip the dialogues entirely and still understand the dynamic of the entire conversation. At the beginning, the two are face to face on each side of the screen, and even if Kimbot is obviously taller than Wednesday, once sitting, none of them are dominating the other. Beginning of the hostility, shot of Wednesday literally pushing Kimbot out of the frame when she calls her an adversary. Reverse shot on Kimbot at the exact same ratio, pushing back, saying she hopes that relationship will be based on trust and not aggressivity. While she keeps trying to reassure Wednesday, attempting to get closer to her, the camera goes full frontal, bringing them back on equal ground. Wednesday says something to intimidate Kimbot, the camera goes back to the initial position, away from them both. Second phase of the conversation, Kimbot tries a different approach, more direct, to try to confront Wednesday about the piranhas in the pool. Now the shot focused on her are again, like previously, when she's pushing Wednesday out of the frame, while the reverse shot on Wednesday are slowly isolating her. She's not pushing Kimbot out anymore, she's alone in her frame. And as soon as that happened, she tries to leave, standing up, so in theory, dominating a still seated opponent, yet, next shot, Kimbot is smiling, completely in the middle of the frame. She simply refuses Wednesday's attempt at taking back control of the situation. Wednesday sits back. Now back to the camera being full frontal between them two, yet quickly something changes. First, Wednesday's look is fleeing Kimbot, then Kimbot gets closer to the camera when she talks about something personal and important to Wednesday, her novel, amplifying her dominance on her, which makes Wednesday react by slightly backing away from the camera and rearranging her expression. Final phase of the discussion. Kimbot wants to talk about Wednesday's novel, but she does not push anymore, as we can see with the camera backing away from her and going on the side without Wednesday being pushed out of the frame. She has proven her dominance, so she does not need it anymore, or so she thinks, because talking about the novel actually makes Wednesday find her confidence back, as her look is not fleeing anymore. Wednesday sees the opening and instantly pushes back, trying to force her dominance on Kimbot, explaining that if her novel is not published, it's because editors are moron. I'm paraphrasing. But next shot, Kimbot is still the same, unfazed by the intimidation attempt, which explains that now they are both in the same kind of shot. This keeps going on for another few shots, the power dynamic slowly moving but never completely shifting, up to the point in which Kimbot's push is becoming too much for Wednesday, who first refuses to answer, attempting to close the conversation, forcing the camera back to its initial position, before answering aggressively and walking out of the room to definitely end the conversation. I really like that scene because in it the entire time Kimbot is in control. Wednesday tries to keep up, but the only moment in which the direction is putting them on the same level, it's because Kimbot allows it. This is a perfect example of cinematographic language, the art of communicating emotions and intentions through simple camera movement. The infamous show don't tell. Now that this little digression is over, let's go back to the characters. Professor Thornhill was likable, and the twist of her being Laurel Gates was unfortunately for me not a surprise, since I thought she was shady right when we met the character. And surprisingly, it was because of those red boots!
Officer, I got one question for you. What are those?
I couldn't explain why that made me suspect her, but it did, and in the end it's also why the characters understood who she was. Finally, Enid is a character that I really liked and at the same time really disliked. She's a super energetic werewolf that can't wolf out. She is mostly likable, her interaction with Wednesdays are most of the time either hilarious or really cute.
Your secret's safe with me. I still think you're weird as shit, though. The feeling is incredibly mutual.
And the scene when she's asked out by Ajax, not really an important character, was pretty funny, but at the same time, I don't know if that was intended like that, but the actress is way over the top. She's playing like an anime character. Way too expressive, way too loud, way too intense. I get the humor of having Wednesday, who is as expressive as a dead body, being forced to live with the loudest and most expressive person on the planet, but even with that in mind, she felt a little extra.
I know what my mom would say. Enid, you're a doormat. You're too needy. Show some teeth. Nobody likes a desperate little furball. Shut up, Mom. Get out of my head. Ah! Don't mess with me. This kitty's got claws, and I'm not afraid to use them. Yoko, come on. Flare those whiskers. The poke-up droops for no one. What is the poke-up, anyway? Only my entire reason for living right now.
Silence, woman! Be gone.
So yeah, I like her as a character, but dislike her in the show. Does that make sense? I'm not sure. Let's move on! I'm not usually much of a client of whodunit stories. I don't dislike the genre as a whole, but since I have a tendency to find quickly who the killer is, in general it becomes frustrating to have the character go over clues as if they were completely blind. And I know my complaint right here is purely subjective, since it's absurd to consider your point of view as an external spectator to be the same as the characters, but it's just the way I feel in general about it. And in this show, it felt special. Like I said before, I knew that Professor Thornhill was the bad guy, yet it was not a deduction coming from clues, it was just me focusing way too much on her fashion senses. Who would wear these kind of boots but a psychotic killer? Who? On the other hand, I had not guessed that Tyler was the Hyde until 5 seconds before the reveal happened. And if there were clues that I saw when I rewatched the show while knowing about Tyler, I have to say I don't think there is any actual clues that would really point toward Professor Thornhill. The only thing suspect about her is the fact that as an alleged normie, she's completely fine working in a school of monsters. And of course, those boots! Okay, I actually have to calm down about this.
Well, I got a little obsessed.
So the mystery of the Hyde felt pretty well constructed, but at the same time the teacher being Laurel Gates was in my opinion kind of coming from nowhere.
Objection!
Actually, while making this video I rewatched the show one more time and I discovered a couple of clues about it, and turns out these are actually pretty well hidden. Either that or I really just didn't connect the dots on this one for some reason. So I take back the entire Laurel's coming from nowhere part. But even if it wasn't perfectly led from start to finish, it's not really such a big deal, since the whodunit part of the story is almost an excuse. The entire story is not really about the murders and finding out who the killer is. As the title so subtly makes you understand, it's about Wednesday.
Yeah, see, that one I knew.
About her evolving, interacting with people and going past the general lack of interest for her fellow living creatures. Going from the sassy and friendly punchline Gatling.
We have roof parties, campouts, the occasional midnight skinny dip.
And Yoko's an amateur mixologist.
She makes a killer virgin mojito. Can get pretty wild.
Wow, do you guys even have a bedtime?
To a sassy, mostly unfriendly punchline Gatling, and that small evolution means everything.
You're lucky.
Do tell.
You don't care what people think of you.
Honestly, I wish I cared a little more.
Baby steps.
Outside of the story now, the show also looks in general pretty good. Without being revolutionary or super original, the direction still managed to be very efficient, like I mentioned when I talked about the exchange between Wednesday and her psychiatrist. There are some scenes that genuinely look really good. The first one that comes in mind is the cello? How do you say this word?
Cello.
Anyway, the cello scene in episode 1, but the ball scene also looks really great and became even better when it turns red. And I like the fact that the violence in the show is not really hidden. Some might argue that when talking about a monster ripping people to shreds, the show isn't that violent, but as a general rule, most teenage shows would cut scenes a lot sooner than this one. Just look and tell me if that would be surprising to have those scenes filmed like that. So yeah, the show manages to show violence without either showing too much or too little. It's surprisingly refreshing. Finally, the music in general is great. It's strangely very different from the Addams Family music while sharing a similar aura. I don't know, it's hard to explain. Just listen to it. Outside of being good in the show, it's an overall very good soundtrack. I think I've talked about everything positive about the show, but as I said, it is not perfect. It's great, but it still has a couple of dark spots that I have to talk about, otherwise it just wouldn't be honest. First dark spot, the Hyde. Not necessarily as a concept or as a character, but visually speaking. What is this god-awful thing? I mean, really, the CGI in general is pretty good in the show, but the Hyde looks incredibly cheap. And it's a shame considering that its design is not bad at all. It is very much Burton-esque. With the big eyes, small nose, long stringy arm and legs, this is totally a Tim Burton design that would work in an animated movie. But here we are in a live action show, yet it looks like they made it the exact same way as if it was an animated show. And it's a problem for the main threat to look so out of the general visual theme of your show, since every time you see it you're more focused on its looks than on the threat. And when you see the werewolf transformation, which looks a lot better even without looking really good, I mean we're on the same level as what? Twilight right here? By the way, yes, she has pink hair as a werewolf, don't worry about it, it's cute, just move on. You understand that it was a voluntary decision to have the Hyde look like this. And I have to admit I don't really understand it. If you have an explanation, go ahead, because I'm really confused about that. And no, I don't think it was about the money, because Burton has mostly dealt with low and medium budget in his career, and he always made it work. I'm not saying it was always good, like I said in my introduction, I think the guy lost his touch over 15 years ago, but at least it was visually consistent and coherent. So the Hyde, unfortunately, is a problem.
That is disappointing.
Negative point number 2. It's a Netflix show, released in 2022. You know what that means.
Patriarchy,
Marginalized group.
Gender-neutral restroom.
but you have stolen the land. Climate crisis meets. Are you mansplaining? Discrimination, a classic example of female objectification for the male gaze.
Patriarchy is what she identified as.
You can't say that, it's offensive.
Bigot.
Conversion therapy for whitewashing this.
Shut up!
Okay, I know like that, it does sound pretty bad. But it's clearly not as bad as most shows in which you hear these kind of words, since it's never really a point that the show is trying to make, and half of the time the characters saying those words end up being a little ridiculized.
Wow. You look...
Unrecognizable, ridiculous, a classic example of female objectification for the male gaze.
amazing.
So it's not as bad as it could be, but you know how it is. Netflix just has to include these nonsensical talking points even if there is no real reason for it.
I was sent here on very strict orders.
And the third and most important negative point of the show, the finale. I loved the entire season, but what the fuck was that leading to? Like I said when I summed up the season, during the finale we discovered that Laura's plan was to bring back Joseph Crackstone, her ancestor, so that he could kill all the outcasts in the school. If you have seen the show, you already know that Joseph Crackstone hated the outcasts because they were magical creatures, or at least that they had magical abilities. In one word, they were heretics that needed to be burned in the name of God. Now question, if the guy hated everything magical so much, wouldn't the first thing he would do when realizing he had just been brought back to life through the use of magic be to kill the one using it? Or himself? Also, Laurel brought him back so that he could kill all the outcasts. And when he comes back, he used insane pyrokinetic powers and magic to paralyze Wednesday and telekinesis to stop arrows mid-air and stuff. But since when does he have powers? When Wednesday's ancestor killed him, or trapped him in a crypt or whatever, he was human. So why does he have powers now? He should just have been brought back as he was back then. So the entire plan to have a regular-ass human who burned a bunch of peaceful witches back in the days come back to life to fight werewolves, vampires, witches and whatever Psy here is a truly terrible plan, isn't it?
Not a great plan.
Oh yeah, and also Wednesday gets stabbed but healed by her ancestor through the necklace that her mother gave her, which is just supposed to increase the intensity of her vision, but apparently also makes coffee and iron your shirts. I don't know, honestly, I thought I had missed something when that happened, but apparently no, it's just coming from nowhere that she can interact with her ancestor through the necklace. And these three are honestly the only bad things that I have to say about the show. I'm surprised myself, but it's really fun to watch. The characters are almost all really likable, almost because Ajax is about as interesting as drying paint, honestly. The story is interesting, Jenna Ortega is captivating, I know I'm repeating myself, but seriously she is. It actually made me want to watch the Addams Family, I can barely believe it myself, but thanks to this show, 2022 finished on a positive note. And considering the disaster that was 2022, I'm truly glad. In the end, I can only encourage you to go watch this show if you haven't already, and if you have,
Go again. For once, a modern TV show with a strong female lead is not actually a trash product, so enjoy it while you can. And let's hope that season 2 will be as great as season 1. I guess we can all thank Jennifer Lawrence for paving the way for this show by being the first ever woman lead in anything.
I remember when I was doing Hunger Games, nobody had ever put a woman in the lead of an action movie because it wouldn't work.
You dumb fucking bitch.